This is the OTP presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans. When it's game day for your health coverage, trust Farm Bureau Health Plans to draw up a winning play for you. They've been backing Tennesseans for nearly 80 years. Pleased to be joined for the final time for the 2024 season. I guess for the first time in 2025.
Oh, no, we're not doing this last first thing.
It's very confusing. Coach Brian Callahan, welcome.
Thank you.
And as usual, Amy has the first question for you.
It only feels appropriate to ask now that the entire first season of your coaching career is complete. What are some of the things that surprised you about this job and what it was going to be like?
There's some the thing that was probably felt the most surprising because you can't simulate it or understand it is take no offense to this either. Is just the amount of media. That was kind of surprising. It's like you meet on Monday and then the radio and then the TV and then I meet again on Wednesday and then I meet again on Friday and then I have a production meeting Saturday and then you meet after the game on Sunday, and it's kind of this constant having to be sort of on in a press conference form, and that was jarring. You know, after like 2-3 weeks of it, you're like, man, this is a lot.
Because when you were in Cincinnati, you probably talked once a week.
Once a week, you know, and that's just not something that when you're talking to guys about the head coaching thing that anybody really ever just talks about, because it's part of the job. Like, you just get used to it. It becomes part of your normal rhythm, which I'm used to it now. But certainly the first part of like that first 5 or 6 weeks where it's like, whoa, this is a lot. You know, this is, especially when it's not going well, you know, and you get that feeling when you're up there all the time. And that was probably the most surprising part of the job.
Well, at some point it almost has to feel like, am I out of things to talk about? Does it feel like you're saying the same thing over and over again?
Sometimes it does. There's also times when new things come up over the course of a season and games, and there's things that we've had plenty of things come up this year. So yeah, there's moments where it feels like I repeat some of the same messaging, but there's also times when there's really things that are new that need to be informed or talked about. And so you try to balance those things, and at least if it's something that's asked in a similar fashion, you try to maybe give a little more detail on something about it that helps helps guys do their job.
You answer questions, which is great, which is why we enjoy working with you, and which is why the media enjoys working with you. And I think the fan base is listening, and they're very interested. Are you conscious about the message that the players are listening to? Is that something you have to do differently as a head coach?
Yes. The best way I can put it, and I don't think this is revealing anything extraordinary, but every time I talk to the media, I more or less act like I'm talking to the team. So anything I would say to the media is something I would say to our team, and I know that whatever I say ultimately – in some way, shape, or form, probably gets back to them. Not all the guys pay attention to stuff, but I'm very conscious of what I say and how I say it to the media, knowing that whatever I'm saying, I should be able to say to our football team, and that tends to keep me in pretty good place.
Have you had to learn to balance how guys ingest that information? Because there's some guys that pay attention to the media, they read the articles, they do all the things. There's other guys who get it casually scrolling through social media. There's a lot of different ways that guys are getting information. Is that something that you've had to adjust to now as a head coach, not just realizing that, well, a guy heard a thing I said in a press conference, but he got a snippet from TikTok or something.
Yeah, I mean these guys they're of a generation that consumes their media in a much different form than perhaps we do. I like to read like a good article. I enjoy that, where I don't know that many of our guys actually like pick up and read an article. They see the Twitter shots and they see the TikTok and they see the social media versions of it. So sometimes it lacks, it can lack a context, or it can lack the clarity of the question or any of those things. And I've not had any issues with it. But I know our guys read some of it, and then sometimes you'd be surprised how few of them don't look at anything. Funny example was one day we're talking about Aziz when he got suspended, and Calvin Ridley was like, "Aziz got suspended?" And it was like 3 days later. It's like, wait, some guys don't pay attention to it.
Right.
They don't pay attention to any of it, and that's probably a healthier way to live for a lot of us. And they just don't see the world outside of what they do on a day-to-day basis. So,
but you say something interesting there about using Calvin as an example and us laughing. The dynamic within a team is always something very interesting. And for this team to have had a rough a year as they did on the field, they seem to have still gotten along well. They assimilated. I mean, you'd go to practice and guys would still be working. I mean, there was never the sniping that you could possibly have. What do you credit that to?
I credit that to the guys in the locker room. They do a great job. I think, our coaching staff deserves some credit for keeping the thing, for keeping things the way they are and communicating with the players. But I think ultimately we do have a lot of guys that love playing football. We got a lot of guys that enjoy being around each other. We have guys that the process of getting ready to play football doesn't change for them, and that's when people ask about things that I get excited about. Those are the things that I look at when I look at our football team and go, those things are right. That's how it should be. Now we got to play better. But the energy, enthusiasm, the preparation, the day-to-day in the building, it never felt miserable. And I also intentionally didn't want to make it feel miserable. Like, there's still a place to have some joy when you're coming into work, even when things aren't going well, because we all know when we make a mistake. We know when we don't play well. You don't have to browbeat guys into, no, that wasn't good enough. We can be straightforward and accountable without making people miserable, and I've been a part of that, different processes, different places. And I think the important part when you're going through a tough season is how do you best keep your team together. And I worked really hard at that part on my end, and I know our guys really bought into that process as well and did things the right way all the time. And the one thing that sticks out to me all the time, there's a press conference. I don't remember when it was from, but one of our own, Nashville's own here, Clark Lee, who was a very good friend of mine and someone I've talked to a lot. But he had a quote that says that the vision can be challenged sometimes to the where you can't even see the final. You wonder if you're ever going to see the final product of it. And his big thing was, are you going to do the next right thing the right way? And I think that's the credit to our team is our guys have done the next right thing the right way kind of consistently throughout the season. And that to me tells me a lot about what type of team we have. And we just have to find a way to improve the football part of it, which is ultimately my job.
What is the number one thing that has to improve the football part of it for 2025?
The turnovers, number one by far. I think you cut those turnovers in half. I mean, we lead the league by a dramatic amount. You cut those in half, and you're going to look at, you're probably going to win 3 more games, and now you got 6 wins. And you cut those maybe by 2/3, and now you might win another 1 or 2, and now you're at 7 games, and now you're 1 or 2 more good games of football away from potentially being a playoff team. And that to me is the biggest difference. Is it's 3 areas. It's turnovers, it's negative plays, and so by negative plays on top of that I mean sacks and penalties. On both sides of the ball in all 3 phases, where we've lost yardage in the return game because of it. We've given up third down conversions that we've gotten guys off the field, but we had a penalty that gives a conversion. Too many of those things that negatively affect the game that are on us to control. That has nothing to do with our talent or our draft or our free agents. It's just purely about how we can control things better. And again, I got to do a better job of making sure we clean those areas up, because you clean that up, the penalties, the sacks, and the turnovers, and you have half of that in all 3 of those categories, I think you're looking at a much different football team.
When you look at things like that are, like you just described, controllables, things that you can kind of have control over, controllables. Is that almost more encouraging because it's not a major schematic flaw? It's not the people that are in the building. Those are relatively small things to be cleaning up. Does that make you feel good going into an off season that it's not wholesale changes?
Correct.
These are small things.
Yeah, and it usually is. And I'm not going to gloss over that. We do need to keep adding talent. We still need good players. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of things that we do have good players here, and we did have games where we looked really, really sharp, and we just need more of that, because those are the things that make you feel much worse about a performance when you turn the ball over 4 times and you give away a game, or you fumble the ball in a critical spot and it gives a chance team to win. And those are all the things that's how you lose games, and we got to keep finding ways to learn how to win again, if that makes sense. And that's part of it. That's part of the process. So that's what I believe in. I believe that there's a lot of things that we can fix and control on top of continuing to coach schematics better and to keep adding players. All those things factor in, but a lot of things we can control are things that will lead to wins pretty quickly.
In your press conference, you said that you need to spend more time with the defense, and because of your job as the play caller, as the primary play caller, and helping to design the scheme of the offense each week, the game plan, that you didn't have enough time. Where will you come up with that time?
Part of that's trusting the guys that I've hired on offense too, is allowing Nick to be the offensive coordinator, and let him run the meetings the way they need to be run and let those guys do their job. I love offensive football, and so I'll never be too far from that. But there's a time and a place for me, especially when it comes to like OTAs, of being much more involved in the process with being in the defensive meetings, being in more special teams meetings when I'm not just with the quarterbacks all the time. And I feel really good about that ability to improve that part of it.
How did you feel that you did as the play caller?
I certainly, I can't come out here and say I felt great because we won 3 games.
Right. But I think you know what I mean in terms of being the head coach and doing that.
Mm-hmm. I gained a lot of confidence as the season went along. I felt really good about our process as a staff during the week and how we put the game plan together. Leaned a lot on our coaches and their expertise to help put it together the right way, and felt really good about how I prepared to call the game. I very much enjoy play calling. It's the part of this that I might probably enjoy the most, and I got better at it over the course of the year. Like I feel really good about my ability to manage and call a game, and I think we made a lot of improvements offensively, I think, over the course of the season, and found ways to get guys involved and found ways to get them the ball and have chances to be productive. So felt good about that part, and certainly a lot of room for improvement. But as the season went along, I got more and more confidence doing it and felt better about all of it as we went along.
As a first-year head coach, you have to establish your own system for everything.
Yes.
And that takes a lot of time. Do you feel encouraged about the things that you have in place in year 1 and maybe where you can expand upon those things in year 2?
I do. A lot of things that we did procedurally, I feel great about. How we go about our business, what the message is, what I'm looking for from our team, from our coaches. That part I feel very confident that we've started that out the right way. Still things that we can do better. Still things that I got to do a better job of making sure guys understand expectations. But yeah, I think the way we do things is right. I believe in it. And I think everybody feels my belief in it, and in turn they also believe in that process. But I like I like how we work, and I like what we do. And again, always room to improve the process, and I'm excited about the opportunity to do it.
Gosh, that has to feel good when you talk about establishing the foundation of a football team, realizing that you have things in place that you feel good about your processes, and you feel good about the buy-in from the staff and the guys on the team. That's got to make it so much easier to go forward into an off season knowing that you already have something established.
Yeah, that's what makes it the most. I need a little bit of a break, but like I'm ready to go now. Like if it was like let's get going, let's go. I'm excited about that. It makes me excited to attack the off season. It makes me excited to see what we can do to get better. But all of those things being in place, and I feel confident with most of that stuff that you sort of hit the ground running in your second off season. It just feels so different than what the first one felt like. Just as I look ahead and planning purposes and all that, it's just I have a much better grasp on everything. All the while, the things that we've started out feel like they're in a good place. That part's exciting.
It felt like that 5 of every 10 questions that you got leading up to the season was about having your dad on the staff.
Yes.
And then in the season, that died down. So now I'm going to bring it back up again.
Great. Thank you.
So my point in asking the question is, now that you've done it, now that you've had a season with your dad on the staff, what was it like? And the second part of that is, did any part of that surprise you?
That part did not. That part did not. I thought he was everything. It was, like I've always said, it's been really fun to watch him work and work with him in his process because I think he's the best out there doing it. That was really cool to see and be a part of, and actually interact with him and have conversations. It was everything I thought it would be. And in the midst of some really difficult circumstances over the course of the season, having his wisdom, perspective, guidance, both as a dad and a former head coach. He'd have to wear those different hats at different times. Sometimes he'd have to come in and say, "This is just me this is me talking to you as your dad. This is what." Or sometimes he'd be like, "You need to do this, this, and this, or you need to think about this, this, and this." This is coming from a guy that's been a head coach and was an interim in Washington, and he's got so many experiences and seen so many things that's the part of it that I didn't necessarily anticipate, knowing all the things that he's done in his career, but how much they would actually serve me well over the course of this season, again, amidst some challenging spots over the course of the year.
If I did something with my son, you have a son as well. If I did something with my son, I'm afraid I would overstep dramatically. My father would have overstepped on me. There's no question about that, which is why I didn't go into his business, which is why his business was very successful. But how did he keep from overstepping?
He's very aware. He's very aware. He's done this long enough to know, and he's worked with other, he's done this with other head coaches, and he's offered advice, and I think he just approached it like he would if he was still working with Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland on how he would approach trying to help. The difference is that sometimes he can tell me things that nobody else would ever tell me. And there's a couple of those moments where, do I feel like he would be overstepping? Certainly. There's times where I'm like, all right, I got it.
Enough.
Come on, Pop.
Enough. I understand. Yeah. But where it's coming from is a place of very sincere trying to help and give me some tools to handle the situation or an experience that might be able to share the what it's like. And that's been really huge for me and how invaluable that process has been. But of course there's times where I'm like, all right, I got it, Dad. Like I got it. But not very often, and usually it's usually more because he's telling me something I don't want to hear, and I probably need to hear it, and I get irritated with it. But other than that, everything's been super helpful, and I don't know how I would have maybe navigated some of the things without the advice that he had and the perspective he gave. So it's been a huge help.
Hey, Titans fans, with a Kroger Boost membership, you'll score big with double fuel points, free delivery, and lots more. Go to Kroger.com/boost for details. Kroger, official grocer of the Tennessee Titans. Tighten up.
Home is at the forefront of all that we do. It's why we're so committed to caring for the places and spaces in which we work and live. Ashley, the official furniture provider of the Tennessee Titans.
We continue with Titans head coach Brian Callahan.
Coach, you have mentioned a couple different times that you feel like there are really some foundational players on this team. We name names on this show.
We do.
Who are some of the people that you feel like are cornerstone pieces of this team going forward?
I'll start with on offense. It's very clearly JC and Pete. Those two guys are critical components of, they're young, talented offensive linemen. Pete's played fantastic over the course of the season. I think he's had a really, really good year. JC had his rookie ups and downs, but his trajectory is one that's being counted on to be at a very high level, and I think he's aware of that. And then Lloyd Cushenberry as well as the center. Again, not a draft pick, but a key free agency signing guy that we're counting on. Calvin Ridley also. Again, really productive as he got more comfortable in the offense, as he got more comfortable with the players around him, and I got more comfortable using him. I thought he really blossomed, and to have 1,000 yards when he basically, didn't hardly do anything in the first 4 or 5 games,
month and a half.
He's capable of a lot more, and we're going to need that from him. Tony Pollard certainly critical part of our offense and our run game, huge part. I think the emergence of Chig has been really good to see. He's had a really nice end of the season and turned into a pretty complete player. Again, another younger veteran that we're counting on to play an important role. And I think Nick Westbrook obviously a free agent, but I think what he's done is his role has been pretty invaluable in the run game and in the pass game. On defense, you look at Jeff and Sweat. I mean, that's you want to be good down the middle of your defense. Those two guys are it. got a really good play from a young corner in Jarvis Brownlee Jr. Roger McCreary had a pretty good year. At the end he got banged up, but over the course of the early part of the season, he was a big part of that pass defense. And then you look at the guys that we didn't see enough of that are sort of incomplete. Is in Legarius, is he what we thought he was going to be? And the answer is, when he was getting ready to play, yeah, he is. He's one of the best corners in football, but he got some setbacks, and we didn't get to see that version of him here. But we need to. He's a big part of it. And obviously Amani Hooker has been a stalwart here and continues to be a big part. I thought he played really good football for us this year across the board, and is going to be another guy we're counting on. So there's a lot of guys in there that I probably named. That was a lot of names maybe, but those are the guys. There's still some other guys that we're counting on, but those are the main guys.
But that's a reason for optimism that you have these players. And obviously you're probably going to want another corner, and you're going to want another edge rusher, and you're going to want another receiver. And there are all kinds of things you need in free agency and in the draft. But so much of it is about quarterback play.
Everything in the league is about the quarterback. It's the hardest position to play in sports.
It is.
There's probably 5 or 6 transcendent style players that are playing right now. Obviously, they're all on the best teams in football. Funny how that works. And there's some young players that are exciting in the league that are starting to find their footing some. But you have to have really above average quarterback play to have a playoff caliber team. And if you have above average play and you got a really good roster around it, you can be a good football team. If you have really good quarterback play, they sort of elevate the rest of it. If you have dynamic quarterback play, sometimes it doesn't matter. they take the whole show. And but yeah, it's the most important position in sports. They're paid accordingly. The good ones are paid like that, and we have to have that.
Are you looking for a quarterback who fits what you want to do, or are you looking for a quarterback who's just so talented that you will fit your system to him?
I think you're always looking for the talent first, and what I mean by that is there's enough offense out there to fit to anybody. And the style of player, if he's that dynamic of a player, you find a way and figure it out. And I think what's different nowadays than maybe 15 years ago is the willingness to do that. A guy like Lamar Jackson 20 years ago probably isn't Lamar Jackson. There's just not the creativity involved. And look at what they did with Jaden Daniels in Washington, and Jalen Hurts in Philly. There's just the styles are so much more wide open for the quarterback position that there's enough offense out there that you can fit a quarterback. Whatever your system is, whatever plays you like, you can fit to their talents. That to me is a no-brainer. And but there's a part of the quarterback process that gets overlooked, and that's going to be the processing part, the person and the process. How do they carry themselves? What's their leadership style? Do they bring people? Do they elevate people around them? What is their? You'll hear me say this, I'm sure, as we go through the draft process. But the nervous system. What is that? What does their brain tell them to do when it's time to do it? What does the processing look like of the defense? Do they understand? Can they see in the moment? And the only way I can give an example is, one of the things that Joe Burrow was so good at is he had such an unbelievable sense of where everybody was on the field on both sides, and he just has this natural feel for what's happening, and that's a processing, that's a internal brain functioning that he can feel and see things that some guys can't. And that's what you look for. Those are the things that separate. They're all going to have talent, but that's the other part is, what does that look like?
How do you evaluate that? How do you find someone that you can see that they are processing information well?
The thing is, if we all had that answer, there'd be a lot less top picks that don't pan out. You know, it's hard to evaluate that. And sometimes you don't know until they start playing whether they really have it or not. But you have to do your due diligence. You have to do the work on it. You have to spend time with the players. You have to be around them. You have to really evaluate that, and you have to really pay attention on when you're evaluating the tape and how you're grading it. It's critically important. You got to see guys. You want to see them communicate. You want to see them talk to players. You want to see what they look like when they're in the All-Star game. The checklist of things is endless, and there's no perfect science. Is my point. And you got to do your best to uncover as much as you can, so you can determine whether or not they have what needs to be for a quarterback.
All right, so let me follow that. You get a guy who's a veteran like Geno Smith, who basically didn't play.
Mm-hmm.
He was on a roster, but he didn't play for 8 years. And now he's been very successful for the Seattle Seahawks. Baker Mayfield has found himself with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We know about Sam Darnold and the year that he's had overall, and I could give other examples. So when you talk about that nervous system and almost that fighter pilot mentality that comes in,
mm-hmm.
is that something that when you watch one of those veterans, you can see that Baker Mayfield has now developed more of that Joe Burrow sense than when he played in Cleveland?
Oh yeah, you can see all of that development. It is also something that can be developed. It's hard, but it can be developed. And I think some of that thing comes from experience too. It comes from just the years of repetition and being a part of it, and then finding the right fitting, that fits, that what they do in Tampa Bay fits Baker well. They do a good job with it. Geno continues to throw the ball about as good as anybody right now in terms of his production, and those things come with a bit of time too. It's not always immediate. It's harder, I think, to be what Jaden Daniels was this year, what Joe Burrow was as a young player, to immediately come in and do that. I do think it starts to take more time. And you kind of grow as you learn. You're banking experience as you're playing, and that's the challenge with playing young quarterbacks, is that there's always going to be a curve that they're working through.
Given your background, given the quarterbacks that you've worked with, the experiences that you've had, and the experience that you've had now as a head coach, are you incredibly well qualified to be leading this search for the Tennessee Titans?
I hope he doesn't say no.
Yeah, it'd be weird if he said no.
Yeah, no. I've spent my life, I think that's I mean, this is my life's work,
sure.
Right? This is what I do. This is what I do daily for hours upon hours a day is football. And I've spent a lot of years evaluating quarterbacks. Every year in the league, I've evaluated the draft classes, and I've written reports, and I've done the research, and I've been a part of selecting a quarterback number 1 overall, and I've worked with guys that were selected number 1 overall. I see what that looks like and what they need to be like, but everything I've ever done has been centered around quarterback play, and I feel very confident in my ability to diagnose it, see it, evaluate it, coach it. That's all I've ever done, and I've played some of it too. I've not played at a high enough level, but I've played quarterback. I know how to go through progressions, and I know footwork, and I've thrown the football, and I know what it feels like, and I know what it feels like to get hit really hard, and how that affects how you play. Those are all things that I feel really confident about as a coach, and so I'm going to have to lend every bit of that ability to help us find the best player at that position that we can find, and we'll see where that comes from, whether it's free agency or the draft, but we'll evaluate every option possible, and we'll have a great feel for what that looks like for us, and we'll have a good answer when we get to one.
I think that's a yes.
That was the answer I was looking for. Yeah, that was it.
It's a good question. Good question.
You got to ask.
We need that.
You
yes.
got to ask.
All right, so let me ask you this. In terms of going forward with the quarterback, is one of the prospects coming out who will be a rookie going to have to convince you dramatically not to go ahead and take a veteran who can come in and guide the ship? Because with $60-something million in available cap room and draft picks, and the fact that you have the number 1 pick in the draft, I mean, if you want to make a move for a veteran, you can quite easily do that. So is one of these guys got to show you, I'm so good, don't do the safer thing, which most people would say, pick me?
I think there's something to that. You got to feel really confident that their ability to lift your program is going to be better than what's available, and that's our job, is to find it. The hard part is that the free agency period starts well before the draft does.
Right, it does. March 12th.
And so there's also a distinct possibility that you sign a veteran and still draft one. That's a possibility. I think literally every option is on the table right now until we sort of get through our process and get down into the nuts and bolts of the evaluation period. All things are sort of on the table, and the timing of both is what makes it a little bit trickier. Is that you're not free agency starts in mid-March, and by that point you're sort of really just kind of starting on the draft, or because you finished free agency, and so free agency always comes first, and then you get to the draft part, and it's just the way the calendar goes. So, but those are things that we rely on the scouting process. They've been evaluating these guys for sometimes 2 and 3 years, through the years of evaluation, and you lean on that as well. So it's all on the table, to be honest.
So what comes next for you, Brian Callahan, and the rest of the Titans coaching staff in the next couple of days, weeks?
I've given our guys a very sort of clear set of things I want them to think about. I have a meeting scheduled with every coach, be roughly, that's scheduled for an hour. Some take that long, some won't. Where I want their feedback on everything, and I want their thoughts on their players. I want their thoughts on the process. Where can we get better? How can I serve better? All of those things are really important to me, and so that's what I'll be doing really once I even leave here. That process will start for me, and then I'll do that until Thursday. I'll have our final staff meeting Thursday afternoon, and then they'll be off until February 3rd, and we all need a break.
Sure.
So that'll be good. We'll need to take a step back, remove yourself from the emotion of it all, the season and all the things, and you do your best to, and you come back ready to roll. And we got a lot of work ahead of us, and a lot of work that I'm gonna need everybody's best. And once you're refreshed and we hit the road, hit the ground running on February 3rd, we're ready to roll, and it'll all find itself into place. But we'll all take a nice break too.
Hey, Titans fans, SeatGeek makes it easy to find tickets so you can be a part of all the touchdown celebrations this season.
Whether you're buying or selling football tickets, SeatGeek is the place to do it. SeatGeek is the official primary ticketing partner of the Tennessee Titans.
The most disruptive idea in ticketing, a ticket that works. Expect the expected.
SeatGeek.
SeatGeek. Made a rookie mistake this football season? Maybe you should have had a Snickers.
Because now you can enter for the chance to turn those rookie mistakes into prizes, including a trip to Super Bowl 59.
Visit snickers.com/rookie mistakes for details.
I want to ask you, I know, and this is what I want to end with. You may have another one, but this is my last one. You wrote a lot of notes this year. You put notes in books.
Yes.
Notebooks?
I mean, handwritten in
notebooks. Yeah.
Notebooks.
Yeah, in
yeah.
notebooks.
Notebooks, yes. How many notebooks did you fill up?
I have 3.
Wow.
3, and they're not all 3 fully like full page to page. They all sort of have different topics. One book that's probably halfway full is every week I make note of all the the roster for the week as far as actives, inactives, signings. So I have a kind of quick reference. We have it on a computer system, but I can look it up very quickly. And then that whole front part of that page is, what did I talk to the team about Saturday night? What was the message? What did I use? What did I talk about? And that helps me, because it helps me know when and what I talked about at certain times, so you don't repeat messages or anything like that. And then I have a list of pregame notes. So when I sit in the locker room in the morning, I take a bunch of notes about the week, things that came up, what I could do different, what did I learn from the week, anything weird, like, for example, like trade deadline, like that was a really uncomfortable, strange week, right? There was a lot of weird things that the team felt different, and I kind of document all of those things, so I know what I went through, and you can refer to it. I have a decision-making notebook that's sort of like critical decisions that I made at certain junctures and why I made it and what went into making that decision. So you can look back and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. I could do this differently this time, or maybe that was good. I'll handle it the same again. And then the last one I have is sort of like a kind of catch-all notebook that I kind of sometimes carry with me around. I take notes, I write things in it. Sometimes I'll transfer those things into one of the other notebooks, but most of the time that's just got all kinds of stuff in it, from reminders for something for the day or actual like real commentary about something I wrote down in the moment. So I just I learned it from Zach Taylor, and over the years in Cincinnati, we would occasionally pull out a notebook from, off season 1 or off season 2, and he just, we'd go through and flip through, and just kind of interesting to see what thoughts you had in those moments. It's a good resource to have and a good thing to be able to go look back on.
Thank you so much for taking time with us this season.
Thanks for having
more
me.
wins to come in 2025.
That's the plan.
That's the plan.
That's the plan.
For Brian Callahan and Amy Wells, I'm Mike Keith. Thank you for joining us for the OTP.